The fog creeps along the darkened river, thick as the secrets that have long drowned beneath its surface. In the eerie silence, you can almost hear the whispers, the faintest echo of something long forgotten. It's as if the wind itself is carrying the voices of those who suffered, those whose lives were cut short by the icy, unforgiving water. You're standing on the very banks of a dark history, one that speaks of royal blood, treachery, and the chilling fate of those who once held power, only to lose it in the most haunting way imaginable. Beneath this river's placid surface lies the legacy of a kingdom torn apart by greed, curses, and whispers of betrayal. The royal bloodlines did not just fall, they were dragged down into the deep, their final moments spent gasping for air, trapped beneath the weight of destiny and the cold grip of justice. One queen in particular, whose life was to be cut short by the very people who once swore allegiance to her, left behind words that would never fade, even in death. Her voice, her warning, still lingers in the shadows. What curse did she speak? What dark prophecy did she seal with her last breath? Tonight, we uncover the chilling tale of royal executions by drowning, an ancient form of justice, or something darker. The year was 1560. Across Europe, shadows lengthened beneath the crowns of kings and queens who ruled through fear, blood, and faith. The royal house of Scotland, led by the tragic and captivating Mary Stuart, stood at the heart of it all. Her life shimmered like candlelight, brilliant, fragile, and always at risk of being extinguished by the cold breath of betrayal. From the moment she ascended the throne, Mary's reign was stalked by whispers of curses, secret alliances, and dark prophecies. The Church called her chosen by God, her enemies called her a witch. But all agreed on one thing: wherever Mary went, death was never far behind. In Edinburgh, the River Forth carved through the land like a black vein, carrying the weight of Scotland's sins in its depths. The river had seen countless executions before, traitors, thieves, heretics, but it would become infamous for a far crueler purpose. In an era where royal blood was meant to be sacred, drowning was the most dishonorable death imaginable. To drown a royal was to condemn their soul to the depths, forever denied the sky, forever silenced beneath the current. Yet in the chaos of Mary's divided court, drowning became both punishment and prophecy. The Queen herself had once ordered the execution of nobles by water, claiming it was the will of divine judgment. "Let the river decide their innocence," she had said. Years later, as her enemies closed in, those words would return to her like a curse she had unknowingly written for herself. Mary's downfall began not with a sword, but with a whisper. It spread from the smoky taverns of Edinburgh to the cold halls of Holyrood Palace, a rumour that the Queen consorted with spirits, that she used charms and omens to control her fate. Her marriage to Lord Darnley had already scandalised the kingdom. His mysterious death, found strangled and left near an explosion meant to mask the crime, shattered what little loyalty remained among her nobles. To them, the Queen was no longer divine. She was cursed. As rebellion stirred, Mary's once loyal subjects turned their gaze to the river, where justice, or vengeance, was said to flow. Captured and imprisoned in her own castle, Mary was forced to watch her kingdom crumble from within. Her cousin Elizabeth I, the calculating Queen of England, watched with cold amusement as Scotland devoured its own. Elizabeth's spies whispered that drowning Mary would not only destroy her body, but cleanse her spirit of sin, ensuring she could never rise again, neither in rebellion nor in legend. In the ancient prisons along the riverbank, chains were prepared, and the iron cages, used once for traitors, were reforged. The ritual of royal drowning was a spectacle meant to strip away every last remnant of power, turning monarchs into mortal warnings. Yet when Mary's captors came for her, something changed. On the night before her execution, a violent storm rose over Edinburgh. The wind howled like a grieving mother, tearing through the castle's stone corridors. Lightning cracked the sky, illuminating the river in blinding flashes of white. Mary did not sleep. She knelt before a single candle and spoke words that no one would ever fully understand. Some said she prayed, others swore she was summoning something far older than God. Her final letter, later discovered in her chamber, bore a single line written in trembling ink. "The water will not cleanse the blood of queens. It will carry our voices forever." When the guards entered, they found her calm, her eyes fixed on the storm. She went willingly. The execution took place before dawn. The river had swelled from the storm, roaring with unnatural fury as if protesting what was about to unfold. The iron cage was lowered into the water and the crowd gathered in silence. Mary stood tall, her white gown fluttering in the wind, her hair loose like a crown of shadows. Witnesses claimed she looked not fearful but defiant, as if she were the judge, not the condemned. When asked for her final words, she spoke softly, her voice carrying over the waves. "What you drown tonight will rise with the tide. I forgive you, but the river never will." The crowd shuddered. Some begged for her life, others turned away, but the nobles who condemned her gave the signal, and the cage sank. The splash was swallowed by thunder. The river took her. What followed was a silence that seemed to stretch for hours. When the storm broke, the river was calm again. Too calm. The executioners claimed the current had carried her body away, but others insisted they saw her eyes open as the cage disappeared beneath the surface. Fishermen refused to cast nets near that stretch of the river ever again. They said the water turned colder there, and that at night something moved beneath the reflection of the moon. Within days, the first signs of the curse appeared. One of the nobles who had signed her death order was found drowned in his own bath. Another's wife claimed to hear a woman weeping outside her window every night until she went mad. The queen was dead, but her presence had not faded. It had spread. In London, word of Mary's watery execution reached Elizabeth III, who received it in silence. But those close to her reported that she paled at the mention of drowning. That night, Elizabeth dreamt of a river filled with hands reaching upward, pulling her crown into the depths. She awoke, gasping for air, her pillows soaked with sweat. For weeks, she refused to go near the Thames, and when one of her courtiers mocked the Scots for their barbaric ritual, she simply said, "The dead do not always stay buried." History records Elizabeth as a queen of reason, but her journals reveal a deeper fear, an obsession with water. She began purifying her chambers with salt, forbade mirrors at night, and refused to drink anything but wine, claiming water was the vessel of curses. Meanwhile, back in Scotland, floods ravaged the countryside. Crops drowned, villages vanished beneath the surge, and each time the waters rose, the locals swore they heard her name whispered in the wind. Mary, the River Queen. The people began to leave offerings along the banks, candles, coins, and bits of lace to appease the spirit that haunted the water. It was no longer a river, it was a grave, and from that grave came the echo of the Queen's final words, carried through mist and time. Those who dared to listen claimed to hear her vow repeating, faint but relentless, "The river never forgives." By the end of that year, no royal dared speak of drowning again. The practice was banned, the records sealed, and the execution site left to rot. Yet centuries later, when the fog drifts over the River Forth and the moon turns the water silver, travelers still swear they see her. A figure in white, walking along the shore, her reflection never touching the surface. Some say she searches for the cage that held her. Others believe she guards the river, ensuring that no more royal blood stains its depths. But those who mock the legend, who dismiss it as superstition, often meet an eerily familiar fate. Drowned, their lungs filled not with river water, but with the silence of centuries. The story of Mary Stuart's execution is more than a tale of betrayal. It is the haunting of power itself. Every crown, every throne, every empire carries with it a price, and the river remembers every drop of royal blood it has claimed. Her death was meant to erase her, but instead it bound her spirit to the one force her enemies could never control: the water. And in its dark depths her curse still breathes. Years passed, yet the river did not rest. The mist that hung over the banks of the Forth seemed thicker, colder, as if it carried not just moisture but memory. Fishermen told stories of voices beneath the current, songs that rose with the tide. Children were warned never to wander too close to the water at night. Those who did returned pale and trembling, claiming they had seen a pale figure in white drifting just below the surface, her eyes open, her lips moving as though still speaking. The people called her the Drowned Queen. But those who remembered her words knew better. This was no ghostly echo, this was a curse, and it was alive. In the court of England, Queen Elizabeth I could not escape the shadow of what had been done. Her advisers spoke in hushed tones of Scotland's unrest, of strange storms that sank ships without warning. The English crown had been strengthened by Mary's death, yet Elizabeth could not shake the feeling that something unseen was tightening around her own fate. She dreamt often of drowning, of cold hands pulling her beneath the surface, while a voice whispered, "You are next." Even her closest confidants began to fear her outbursts. She would wake, screaming in the night, demanding all mirrors be covered, claiming to see Mary's reflection standing behind her shoulder. In her private diary, found years after her death, one passage was underlined twice. Her curse has no borders, it moves through water, and all rivers lead to the sea. The curse seemed to follow not only Elizabeth, but the generations that came after. Within a decade, sickness swept through the nobility of both England and Scotland. Infants of royal blood were born weak, their first cries barely whispers before silence took them. Servants spoke of hearing water dripping in sealed rooms, of footsteps pacing near the basins and fountains long after the halls were empty. A few whispered that it was Mary's doing, that her spirit was claiming the heirs of those who condemned her. In time, the legend spread through Europe, growing darker with each retelling. Wherever royal families held power through cruelty, drowning became a fate whispered in the corridors of castles. "Beware the queen beneath the water," they said, "for she waits for the proud." In 1603, when Elizabeth herself finally succumbed to age and exhaustion, the attendants who prepared her body noticed something strange. Her skin was cold and damp, though she had died by candlelight in a sealed chamber. A sheen of moisture clung to her face, as if she had been bathed moments before death. One servant claimed she heard the faint sound of rushing water as the Queen exhaled her last breath. That same night, the River Forth rose without warning, flooding nearby villages. The sky glowed with unnatural blue light, and for hours the people swore they heard a woman's voice echoing through the storm, repeating one phrase again and again: "The water remembers." As centuries passed, the story of Mary Stuart's drowning was suppressed by the royal historians. Official records listed her death as by execution, never specifying how. but the oral legends endured. The site of her execution became a forbidden place, swallowed by ivy and silence. Travelers avoided it after dark, and the few who dared to visit spoke of the river changing color when the moon was full, sometimes silver, sometimes red. In 1784, a group of antiquarians from Edinburgh sought to uncover the truth. They dug near the banks where Mary was said to have died, hoping to find the iron cage. On the third night, one of the men disappeared. His companions found only his hat floating near the reeds. His body was never recovered. The following morning, when they returned to the site, the river had shifted its course overnight, as if it had buried its secret deeper. By the Victorian era, the legend of the drowned queen had become both fascination and fear. Poets wrote of her beauty beneath the waves, her white gown swirling like mist through the water. Spiritualists held seances to call her spirit, claiming she offered glimpses of the future, visions of crowns falling and empires crumbling into the sea. But each seance ended the same way, the sound of rushing water, sudden chills, and candles snuffed out as if drowned by unseen hands. In 1863, one noblewoman who hosted such a seance was found dead in her chamber, her lungs filled with water, though no trace of it was found nearby. On the mirror above her vanity, written in condensation, were the words, "The river never forgives." In modern times, the curse remains a whisper in Scottish folklore. Locals still leave flowers along the riverbank each year, on the anniversary of Mary's death. Some claim that the fog grows thicker on that night, that it takes the shape of a woman kneeling in prayer. Historians have dismissed the drowning as myth, arguing that Mary was executed by beheading in England, not by water in Scotland. But those who have studied the darker, unrecorded histories, hidden letters, forbidden diaries, know there is more than one truth. In 1927, during restoration work near the old execution grounds, workers uncovered a rusted iron cage fused with the riverbed. Inside were fragments of bone wrapped in rotted silk. The cage was removed, taken to Edinburgh Castle for study, but within a week the lead researcher drowned in his own bathtub. The investigation was quietly closed. The cage was returned to the river, sealed away once more. They say the Queen's final words still echo there. Fishermen speak of a woman's voice whispering from the fog, calling out in both English and Scots tongue, "I forgive you, but the river never will." The air grows colder when those words are spoken, and birds fall silent. Divers who have entered the depths of the river claim that their lights flicker out halfway down. Some report seeing faces in the silt, others swear they felt a hand brush against theirs, yet none have been able to reach the bottom. The current always turns them back, as though guarding something ancient and furious. In the archives of the Royal Scottish Museum, one forgotten document lies sealed, a confession written by one of Mary's executioners. In it he describes how the Queen's body was never recovered, and that the river did not take her as it took others. Instead, he wrote, "The water closed, but it did not swallow, it kept her." There are those who believe that the curse of the drowned Queen was not a punishment, but a transformation, that in death Mary became something more than human. The river is her kingdom now, its currents her messengers, its storms her rage. Every flood, every drowning, every ripple of water that claims a soul in Scotland is said to be her doing, her justice for the betrayal that ended her reign. Some say that on stormy nights she rises from the depths, her crown of water gleaming beneath the lightning, her eyes black as the abyss. She walks the banks of the river in silence, waiting for the next royal to fall, her gown dripping not with water, but with centuries of sorrow. But there is another ending whispered among the old storytellers. They say that if one stands by the river at dawn, when the fog is pale and the world is still, a different voice can be heard, softer, sadder, a woman's voice singing to the river, not in anger, but in mourning. It is said she sings for her lost kingdom, her lost son, and the innocents that drowned with her that night. Those who hear it and listen without fear are said to be blessed with second sight, to see truth where others see power, to understand that every crown is cursed by those who bled for it. Whether Mary's spirit seeks vengeance or peace, no one can say for certain. Only the river knows. And so the water flows on, carrying with it the echoes of a queen's final breath. Beneath its surface lies not just her body, but her memory, a memory that refuses to fade, that stirs whenever greed, betrayal, or pride poisons the throne. Perhaps that is why storms still rise without warning over the river Forth. Perhaps that is why even now, when the moonlight touches the waves just right, you can almost see her face gazing back from the depths. The drowned queen. The curse that time could not bury. The voice that history tried to silence, still whispering through the dark waters of Scotland. The river never forgives. The river sleeps, but her curse does not. Centuries may pass, but the drowned queen's voice still drifts through the fog, soft as breath, cold as the water that claimed her. Her final words echo in every ripple. I forgive you, but the river never will. What was meant to silence her became eternal. Her vengeance flows through time, patient as the tide, waiting for the next betrayal, the next crown to fall.